Ironically, Turkey was one of the countries who recognized one of the first countries actually to recognize the independence of Armenia back in the early 90s. So, but at the same time, Turkey was the country which never established diplomatic relations with Armenia without opening borders. You know that the border with Turkey is closed since early 90s, since the independence, and there's a blockade. Armenia is a landlocked country, blockaded by 2 of 4 neighbors, by Azerbaijan and by Turkey. So
I think that the situation with Turkey merits more concrete analysis. So if you may remember, at the time Erdogan was elected, he was internationally perceived as a very liberal personality, as a personality who would revolutionize Turkey and move Turkey into the European Union. Then fast forward, just 2018, 2019, in 2018, he brutally stamped down on the coup against his government. He introduced a semi or a presidential system, the system from which Armenia moved away in 2018. So how significant are these events? How significant is Turkish leadership in regards to the Turkish-Armenia relationships, Turkey Nagorno-Karabakh conflict?
So actually from that point, Turkey moved to another direction. They had foreign policy, the priority in their foreign policy called zero problems with neighbors. But it failed, and I call it a policy of zero neighbors without problems, because Turkey has with all of its neighbors when you look around, like literally everybody. And this is the foreign policy of Turkey. They wanted to become a part of the European Union, but they failed to do that. And they decided, okay, if we're not going to the European Union, we're going to somewhere else. Now Erdogan is leading Turkey to sort of sultanate, as we call it. And actually, I think it's a totalitarian regime already established in Turkey, and the dictator is Erdogan.
So does this imply, should Erdogan ever abdicate, we would have an opportunity to redraw relationships?
You mean to try to establish relations again, or what?
Because please correct me if I'm wrong. I think if Turkey would have a sincere interest in ending this conflict, because Azerbaijan will listen to Turkey. If Turkey says no, we will not involve. If Turkey says Azerbaijan, no, don't use warring rhetoric, you would have a much easier time finding a resolution.
Of course. If Turkey was a reliable partner for everyone, not for Armenia, but for everyone, for the international society, this ceasefire would be in place. Actually, we noticed that first it was the Russian president who tried to put an effort to stop the hostilities and to hold a ceasefire. This was a Russian president. Then it was the French president Macron who did the same, and parties agreed to ceasefire. And as after the agreement initiated by Russia, Azerbaijan actually didn't keep the war. So they started to shoot like minutes after the ceasefire should be in place. And the same was with President Trump. Actually, Trump called 2 foreign ministers to Washington, D.C., State Secretary, National Security Advisor, and all these people were working with Armenian and Azerbaijani foreign ministers. And even U.S. National Security Advisor O'Brien said that Armenia is now ready for a ceasefire, but we're pressing on Azerbaijan to agree. So we definitely see that the superpowers, when they are pushing on Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan is not doing whatever they are pushing, whatever they're pressuring, that means they have a big support coming from somewhere else. And that somewhere else is Ankara, that somewhere else is Turkey. And definitely we have a situation when Turkey is supporting totally Azerbaijan and saying, okay, I will take some international pressure on myself, you do your war.
And then a last question to Turkey before we move on to the next country. In the last 2 years, really, press freedom drastically decreased in Turkey. I think right now Turkey is on spot 156 out of 180 countries. And what is the implication? Because we know that there is a large Armenian minority in Turkey, in eastern parts of Turkey, and also Armenians that don't know that they are Armenians. Without press freedom, you can't advocate, you can't lobby, you can't publish. What is the implication of the press freedom on the relations?
Actually, in all these lists, in all these lists, like freedom of press, freedom of whatever, Turkey is holding the worst position in the world. Not Turkey only, but Azerbaijan too. Armenia changed significantly within the last few years, and Armenia is getting more democratic state. Armenia is getting more. Armenia is having more freedom in press, more freedom in using internet, and a lot of places Armenia is doing a good job. So we're moving ahead all the time, every next year we have better scores in different international lists. So this is what Armenia is doing. But Turkey, in fact, they're going back and back and back. So as I told you, they are becoming a totalitarian regime with the dictatorship under the dictatorship of Erdogan.
And unfortunately quite a powerful with 80 million, now 60 million
Exactly.
people. But moving on, there are more countries involved and maybe an unsuspecting partner, but I would like to spend at least a few minutes on Georgia. Georgia was the only country that actually had quote unquote friendly relationships with both Armenia and Azerbaijan. What is Georgia's role? And can Georgia prove leadership in this conflict? Is there any opportunity?
I don't think Georgia could play a key role or any leadership because not because they are not able to do so. They are good friends of Armenia. They're good neighbors. We have perfect relations. Of course, we have some problems. We have some difficulties like any other neighbors could have. But we are friends with Georgia. Georgia couldn't do that because even Russia couldn't do that. Even US couldn't do that. Even France couldn't do that to represent European Union in the Minsk group. So nobody could do that. And definitely Georgia couldn't do that too. Georgia is a very important partner, strategic partner for Armenia. And I'm sure that the Armenian-Georgian relations should be developed in all the ways, from economy to international cooperation, from trade, etc. So Georgia is a very important partner for us, but unfortunately, they cannot do anything about it because, as I told you, even the superpowers are not able to do anything here.
But I would say Georgia will become critical once this conflict moves to a stage where there is an armistice, for example, because Georgia can host like talks between civil society in Azerbaijan and Armenia without being publicly known.
Actually does. Georgia, there are a lot of meetings of Armenia and Azerbaijani civil society represented, and they usually do that in Georgia because Georgia is one of 3 countries in South Caucasus region, and usually Armenian and Azerbaijani civil society represented, when they want to talk, Georgia is a good place to talk, to meet, and to discuss, etc. So usually Georgia is in the center of this kind of initiatives. It doesn't matter who is the organizer, who is trying to sort of bring these 2 countries together, but Georgia is a good place, good platform for these 2 countries and civil society, so these 2 countries to talk.
And then moving to the south, obviously Iran. Iran has like certainly some strategic relationships to Armenia, but we also know that some Iranian villages were starting to be shelled. What is Iran's role in this conflict, and what are Iran's relationship to all 3 stakeholders? Armenia.
As I already told you, we have 4 neighbors, but we have closed borders with 2 of them. So basically, we have 2 borders, 2 borders open. One is Georgia, the other one is Iran. And of course, Iran is having a lot of problems with the United States, and we know about the sanctions against Iran. So we cannot use all our potential, and I'm talking about trade potential and all the other things, to develop our relations and economic partnership with Iran. Unfortunately, we're not able to do so. But Iran is trying to play a very, very constructive role. He is trying to. Actually, for Iran, it's very important to have a mutual border with Armenia, because this is one of those borders which is open for Iran. And of course, there is a pressure coming from the United States not to cooperate with Iran for all the neighbors, etc. But we're fortunate enough to have open border, and we are fortunate enough to have very good relations with Iran. And I think Iran is a very good partner, very good neighbor and a very good friend for the Armenian people and for the Republic of Armenia.
So in this way, Iran can mitigate some of the adverse effects, at least caused by the war. Sending aid, sending energy, oil, gas, I'm sorry.
To Armenia?
Yes.
Actually, you know that Iran is under sanctions, and it's really very hard to buy some goods from Iran. It's really very hard. We of course do trade with Iran, but it's very limited because of the sanctions, because of the American sanctions. Used to be UN Security Council sanctions, but they're expired just a few days ago. So, but there are still American sanctions, and unfortunately, we're not able to use all the potential that we had to use with Iran.
Yes, quite frankly, but at least Iranian people, Iranian tourists are allowed to come into Armenia, and they take Armenia up en masse.
Of course. And we also have a big Armenian diaspora living in Iran, very influential, very powerful Armenian diaspora, very well respected by Iranian people. So yes, we have a very good and very large Armenian community, and we have a lot of tourists coming to Armenia to spend holidays, Iranian holidays, right here in Yerevan.
And so I think now it becomes quite interesting. You as a researcher, let's have a little discussion on Azerbaijan. Maybe where to start. The initial leadership of independent Azerbaijan, Haydar Aliyev, there's a key difference. He came from the Soviet leadership. What implication did this have, and how did it set up the country?
Actually, he created a kingdom, because when he passed away, he gave his presidency to his son. Now, as you know, Ilham Aliyev, who is the son of Haydar Aliyev, appointed his wife as the vice president of the Azerbaijan Republic. So it's a classical dictatorship, or whatever you call it. I mean, there's no democracy absolutely, because Ilham Aliyev is a president of Azerbaijan for quite a long period of time, and before him it was his father. Now that himself. In the future, maybe his wife or his son, whatever. But now we're dealing with a situation that Azerbaijan there's no democracy in Azerbaijan at all. Whatever they say, whatever they try to show the world, that they have democracy, they have respect for human rights, etc. Whatever they say, that's not right. That's not true. So this is a classical dictatorship.
Is it de jure? Like the situation is as always, or did it worsen over the years?
You mean the situation in Azerbaijan?
Yes.
Well, if you take a look from the lists that you were saying, international lists, international ratings, etc., Azerbaijan is holding worst position. They have jailed journalists. They have many abuses in human rights, and that's not Armenians saying that. That's the international organizations are saying that. And I mean international, you name it, a lot of organizations like freedom of journalists organizations. I mean, organizations who are fighting for the freedom of the journalists, and many more. So I think that everybody's saying that Azerbaijan is a classical dictatorship with limited rights, with limited human rights, with limited rights of journalists, and all other rights.
Okay, and what I want to spend some time on, you know, Azerbaijan, I think from, if I'm not mistaken, from 2005 to 2015, increased its military spending tenfold, a direct consequence also of them finding oil. And then again, you spend all this money on military. Does it mean, is it a direct implication that the Azerbaijani leadership is scared? Do they fear? Do they need propaganda in order to survive themselves?
This is one of the reasons, actually. Whatever you are saying is one of the reasons, but at the same time, Azerbaijan was preparing for a war, and they didn't even hide that. They were always saying that we're preparing the war against Armenians, we need to destroy all the Armenians. They were spending billions and billions of dollars buying weapons from around the world, including the countries where you cannot buy arms, like the president of Azerbaijan said a few days ago, they were buying arms from Iran, which was under sanctions, which is just very interesting point to make. So I think the American government is now trying to figure out how did they buy anything from Iran if Iran was under sanctions. So this is basically what they were preparing for, and they were preparing for war against Nagorno-Karabakh and war against Armenia, and basically we have what we have now. At the same time, they were spending millions of dollars for lobby in European Union, in separate countries of the European Union, and of course in the United States of America. They spent about 25 to 27 million dollars in the United States within the last, I think, 5 or 6 years, promoting Azerbaijan, promoting Azerbaijani-American relations, trying to bring high-level officials from Azerbaijan to United States and vice versa. So they spent a lot of time on lobbying to sort of create a good image of dictator Ilham Aliyev.